Welcome to Frame of Reference, informed, intelligent conversations about the issues and challenges facing everyone in today's world. In-depth interviews to help you expand and inform your frame of reference. Now here's your host, Raul Labreche.
Well, welcome everyone to another edition of Frame of Reference, Profiles in Leadership. And I am excited today. This has been just a wonderful run of interviews I've been having lately because it's people that I've never met before. It's people that have really insightful and comments as well as wonderful backgrounds. So we're doing exactly what I set out to do with this podcast from the beginning, and that's to interview people to give everyone that listens a new frame of reference. And today's guest is no slouch in that area, let me tell you. I am so pleased to be talking with Mahwish Syed. Mawish is I'm going to actually read something to you from your executive summary for Purgatory to Paradise, because I thought it was actually, I liked it better than your bio. I'm sorry. Anyways, because of what it says about you. Mawish has written a book called Purgatory to Paradise. She is an award-winning designer, and she celebrates beauty as a vehicle for healing. When Mawish was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2019, she faced a crossroads. She could run from the fear, the distress, and the ominous history that the word cancer holds in our imagination, or she could walk proudly into the illness and find her way to wellness, reemerging from her personal underworld, empowered and burnished like many of mythology's greatest heroines. That is just fantastic. I'm sorry, I don't think you can get any better than that for a theater person like me, especially, right? To have come forth from your underworld. So thank you, Mawish, for being with us, for coming through your underworld, and taking time to join us today on the show.
So glad to be with you, Raul.
So, Mawish, I want to find out a little bit more. Well, obviously a lot more later on, but if you had to just explain, I kind of call it our elevator speech. So if you're in the elevator with someone and they ask you, what do you do? What would be your response for that?
I transform your health and your home into a healing oasis.
Boy, that's pretty succinct. So, what if someone at that point says, uh-huh. And how does that work? What goes on at that point?
Oh, my God. Let me show you. Yeah. Let me show you how to turn your purgatory into your paradise.
Excellent. Well, and there is I saw somewhere else in the notes that you do talk quite a bit about epigenetics. So, which I don't know that how many people will be familiar with that whole concept, but there is this scientific realm now that has been explored where we don't have to change DNA in order to change outcomes in our health and even our psychology of things. The reality is that our behavior, our environment, all of the things that our thought processes, all of those tie into our genes, hence the epigenetics, and can turn things on and off. So, which is, bright skies are going to clear up, put on a happy face, right? I think of my theater background. There's a lot of truth to that. And you see people that are born old, and just stay old throughout their lives. And there are others that never grow old. So one has to assume that there is something different because they're both human beings. It's just there are other things at play in this whole process. So let's see if we can get a hint of what those things are with you by playing my favorite things, okay? One of these days, I'll hopefully have enough money that I can get Julie Andrews permission to use her version of it, because it was just a wonderful little interlude there. Well, anyways, here we go. So, I think I've explained to you, this is the Rorschachtian, view of things, where I just throw something out, you throw it out. There's no right or wrong answers. There's just the answer. Okay, so here we go. We'll start something easy. How about your favorite song?
Oh my goodness. Lately, it's Mysterious Ways by U2.
Really? Okay. Interesting. Okay. How about a favorite recording artist, as long as we're on that bent?
Favorite recording artist lately would be Cannons.
Really? I don't know that group at all. So, interesting. Okay. How about favorite movie?
A Room with a View.
A room?
EM4.
Really?
And as a matter of fact, James Ivory and Ismail Merchant, who were the producers and directors, I met James Ivory on Halloween. Yeah, that was a good time.
That must have been thrilling in so many ways. So,
yes.
What do you like about the movie?
A Room with a View?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, it is divinely romantic.
Okay.
And it takes place in Italy, in Florence. And it's really about following your bliss and taking risks. And that's really what struck me and has always struck me. It's been around for a long time, and it's still a favorite.
Yeah, is that a 60s or 70s movie? I'm trying to think.
It's 80s.
Is it? Okay.
Maybe it's 80s. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a classic nonetheless. So I'm glad that those classics are still alive in folks like you. How about, do you have a favorite chair?
Ooh, that's a good question. I do like the Pelican.
Okay.
I like the shape of the Pelican chair.
Okay.
It's a classic mid-century chair.
Okay. Do you have a favorite one at your home that you go to that's anyone else takes it, you say, out of my chair? So
that's interesting. I spend a lot of time at my desk, so it has to be a comfortable chair.
Okay.
And that's an upholstered chair that I use.
Okay. There are some, I know, my father-in-law had a chair. He had a lazy boy chair that he had worked it into his body form. And if you sat in that chair and he came out, there was no question. You just got up and moved to another chair. So that was, I would say.
One. I have another one. I just remembered. It is a 1920s boudoir chair that I used in my store. And basically we sat, it was a pair, and I sat with my brides where they confessed all their problems and issues and relationship issues, and while we were making their dress. And I still have those chairs, and now they're my boudoir chairs.
Well, and you with a design background, I know with my theater background too, I tend to think a lot about, it's not just about the function. You know, the form follows the function, and there are oftentimes forms that are exquisite, and there are other forms that are just very simple, but all of them can be very just alluring, have an emotional response that comes from them. I always find that to be interesting, how you look at the structure of design and how things proceeded through history. And there's really, I think, a fascinating correlation there between what was going on in the culture and in that part of the world at that time, and then the furniture and, of course, the clothing and all of those things that were part of that. Everything makes more sense when you understand the whole, gestalt, I guess, ultimately. So how about, do you have a favorite animal?
Snakes.
Snakes. Ooh, snakes. You're not Indiana Jones then. He hates snakes. That's interesting. Why snakes?
Although I love Indiana Jones. Why snakes? Snakes, I write about this in my book. I fell in love with snakes when I was a little girl. I would sneak out of our house in Pakistan and go to the snake charmer and watch the cobra dance. And I grew up with also folk tales in my family being told about snakes and how they played a part in our family's history.
Oh, really?
Believe it or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And by the way, they're not, in the Western world, they're demonized, but in the Eastern, a lot of the Eastern mythology venerates snakes. They represent female sexuality, immense amount of prosperity and good fortune, and immortality. Think about the symbol of the Ouroboros, where the snake's eating its tail. But this idea of, transcending time is something I also talk about.
Sure. Well, it's weird, too, in Western civilization, even the medical sign, the sign of doctors, has the snake intertwined it. And that, as I understand, that comes from biblical times, where Moses put up the staff that basically, killed all of the snakes that were plaguing the people at the time. So I thought, it goes way back with the Western mentality to have that sort of demonization. Well, I mean, the serpent in the garden, right? I mean, it's all the way back to the beginning of things. So
Well, even predating Judeo-Christianity, and I talk about this in my book, I had the symbol of the caduceus of Hermes and the staff of Asclepius. The snake is indeed wrapping around a branch, which I think Christianity ripped off and turned into a whole other story.
Probably. There's a lot of that cross, right, pollination of things. So how about, do you have a favorite author besides yourself? Okay, you can't say yourself.
Oh my gosh, Joseph Campbell.
Okay. Why?
Because he really delved into the heart of humanity and realized he did comparative studies of different mythologies and folklore around the world and came up with that hero's journey. And I so much relate to him. I adored that man, really. I loved, and he's quoted in my book too. Okay.
So now are you going to get to meet him too, like you did with the...
Unfortunately, he passed before.
So...
That at his...
Oh, well, maybe in the afterlife, that would be nice.
Yeah.
So, okay, last question. Is there a favorite memory that you have, a favorite thing that has happened to you at some point that when you run across something that reminds you, maybe a smell or a particular song, oftentimes I think for people, that when you have that reminder, you can go back to that place, that memory, and just have a sense of, this is a center point for me. This is a part of the core of who I am, and you kind of celebrate it, if you will.
I love that question, Raul. I would say it's waking up really early in the morning in my grandmother's garden, listening to the parrots squawk around in the trees, and smelling the jasmine and the roses, and just watering her plants, watering the garden, and listening to the birds. It's such a fond moment for my childhood, and I do that. And as a matter of fact, I recreate that paradise here in New York City.
Excellent. And that's so important too, that I think far too often we don't even take the time to figure out those moments, to realize that is a part of our heritage, our personal journey, right? And to be able to celebrate that, as well as just commemorate and be thankful for that. I think oftentimes we need to spend more time being thankful, period, right? So, yeah. Well, thank you for your honesty with all that. So let's talk a bit about, you have some wonderful talking points. So let me get a better understanding. So it sounds like your breast cancer in 2019 was really kind of a formative, a crucible moment for you. Have there been things that you think even leading up to that point that prepared you for that time? Because it strikes me that you made an unusual response to that challenge, and it seems to me that there had to have been some preparation for that to enable you to make that choice, instead of the sort of atypical, oh, woe is me, what am I going to do, my life is over, mentality that often happens.
I was initiated during the birth of my son, Raul. I had him very early. He was born 3 months early, and I was hospitalized and spent time in the hospital for a month before he was born on bed rest. So, yeah, I had always me moment when I was like, wait, what do you mean I can't leave? What are you talking about? I felt like I was, going to prison, but it was saving my life and saving his life. So, yeah, that perspective definitely helped me understand that sometimes what appears as a calamity can actually be a blessing in disguise, and to not throw, literally, pun intended, baby out with the bathwater and say, oh my God, that's it, it's over, like my life is over. No, I looked at cancer as a way to, well, that had an interesting turn of events. Like, what is this? What is the universe telling me? What am I supposed to learn from this? And I started to investigate instead of just taking it as at face value. Okay, life as I knew it was definitely over. But again, like that Ouroboros, like the snake, we have that ability to shed our skins and start all over again. And that's why I think the symbolism of the snake is such an important thing for me, because I really was shedding during chemo and radiation and all the cancer treatment, the allopathic treatment, where I was literally shedding skins and coming out as the goddess once more. But if you look at any ancient mythology, any kind of hero's journey, there's always an obstacle that the hero has to overcome. You are not, you just aren't handed this, okay, you're great. No, one has to become great, right? And one has to go through that crucible, that process, that challenge, and come out the other side transformed, really. You are no longer the person you were. And I think that's a really healthy thing to do. It's a healthy thing to embrace that change. And I think sometimes we're afraid of change. Sometimes it takes something like cancer to make us change. Unfortunately, I hope, for people that they don't need to go through that in order to come to that conclusion. But I think it's really important to recognize that each and every single one of us has that opportunity today to change.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, the only things that don't change are dead, right? I mean, when you come to think of it, I oftentimes will challenge friends of mine that say, I don't like surprises. And I think to myself, how did you get out of bed this morning? Because everything that happens any day, even if you have a routine, it's still a surprise. It's something that you haven't done before. You haven't done it that way at that time, whatever, before. So our response is critical, right? So how do you maintain that? I think, a lot of times we do have this, I would call it like the higher self, right? The self that sees a perspective that in fact pushes us or, pulls us if need be towards, a higher level of thinking, a higher level of hoping, of dreaming, all of those things. How do you have a secret sauce, if you will, to maintain that perspective for yourself?
Yeah. Her name is Persephone. She is the goddess Persephone that I write about in my book, and she's been around since I was 9 years old when I discovered her in my Montessori school, third grade class. And I think what really resonated for me about her is the idea that she goes into her underworld and she comes out the other side. She's one of two gods, Olympian gods, who's able to kind of commute between life and death. And it's not lost on me that I ended up designing Persephone series when I was doing fashion and had my dress shop downtown. I did a whole Persephone series, and who the hell knew that I was actually going to become her? And I think the symbol of who she is and what she represents for me really helps guide me, because she allows me to look past the surface of things. I mean, I'm the type of person who believes more in the unseen than the seen, Raoul. That's really important to recognize, because, the idea of Maya, the idea that the world is an illusion, that there's a plasticity as well, and a neuroplasticity, the ability for us to evolve and shift. I think that's really rooted in who we are on a much spiritual and deep biological level as well. And that's something I speak to in my book.
Boy, and it gets into a whole bunch of different things that are going on in all sorts of domains. I think every time someone starts talking about things of that nature, I think, well, gosh, isn't that just the same thing as quantum physics in the way that they're trying to explore, this whole idea of the quantum dimensions, the idea of quantum computing, that something is not just a yes or a no, it's also both. And the idea that you can have something working at that speed to see all possibilities, and from all of those possibilities, choose one that makes the most sense or will cause you to arrive at the requested solution. And I love that Persephone has been such a personal, marker or personal heroine of yours. That speaks volumes about you, honestly. Anyone that wants to go ahead, go on Wikipedia, find out about Persephone. She is a rockin' gal, let me tell you, in a lot of ways. So what about Persephone's challenges? Do you identify with those? I mean, her journey through the underworld, as I remember it, and it's been a long time, sorry, but it's fraught with a lot of nasty stuff, or things that she has to really wrestle with her own psyche. Ultimately, I guess that's how I think of it, at least. Is that?
That's a really interesting way of putting it, because one of the things I talk about is to embrace your shadow, and the idea that your shadow and all the bits of you that we like to, shovel under the carpet, so to speak, they still are a part of us, and to embrace the full spectrum of our beingness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important to recognize, especially the shadow side of life, which is death. I think a lot of people still are in this weird construct, like death is going to happen to other people and not me. We're all going to die at some point. And to face our own death in a way that is graceful is really important. And back to what you just hit upon, it made me laugh when you were talking about quantum physics. I designed a clothing collection inspired by Brian Greene's Elegant Universe.
Oh, really? Oh, does Brian know this? Because I would think he'd be all over that. So,
right?
Yeah.
Right. And then also, I'm certified in quantum biology.
Oh, really?
That's what I'm weaving into my designs right now, Raul.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I have a very strong science brain and an art brain. They're really equally balanced,
Sure.
equally just like life and death. So This idea of our shadow, it's really important to explore, because when I'm working with clients, design clients who are like afraid to really choose that thing that gives them joy, like the way you were asking the questions, what's your favorite this? What's your favorite that? I ask them that, and it's almost like a pre-prescribed, like, oh, I should like this because that's what's in fashion, or I should like that because that's the in artist. I'm like, no, what do you really like?
Right.
It's not about trends. It's not about what's in fashion. It's not what your neighbors have or your so-and-so, fashionable friend, whatever.
Right.
What do you like?
Right.
Let's discover that. And a lot of that stuff, Raul, has been shoved into the dark, into the closet, into like it's put away. And let me tell you, as I get older, the older I get, the more childlike I get. The older I get, the more, back to the, embracing the inner child in me. Like, what would my 6-year-old, Mawish want? What would she have done? I have recreated my grandmother's garden in my apartment in New York City. I have a parakeet that flies around. I've had 5. I had, talking birds. I have had, all sorts of flora and fauna. I have trees in here. You can see a little one here. But I have all that.
Yeah.
Scented orchids.
Yeah.
Orchids that smell like coconuts. I use fragrance as a part of creating that whole sensory experience in my design.
Sure.
That's important because it's linked to memory. It's a very primal sense.
Yeah.
So I think the older I get, the more I reclaim my innocence, which is important.
Boy, I think of, you mentioned Judeo-Christian. I think of the story of Christ saying, unless you be as one of these, when the children would run to him, you shall not see the kingdom of heaven. And I believed in that for a long time, just because when I direct, one of the first things I talk to with casts is, why do you think they call it a play? And getting back in touch with the fact that the only way that we're really going to get at the root of what this play is about, at what the center story is of this, is if we learn to play again and try different things and see what will fit correctly or what fits most comfortably for you and make sense of this whole journey. It's a fascinating thing to get people to rediscover their childhood, and you have to be brave, right? I mean, when I think about the whole idea of facing the world and saying, my wife and daughter go crazy because they watch, Project Runway, and I'll see this stuff come down the aisle. I'm like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever said. And they're like, Dad, Raul, that's so in style right now. You don't know what you're talking about? Like, I do know what I'm talking about. I think that looks stupid. So for me, I'm sorry. I know what I'm talking about. I think it looks stupid, and for me it does. So I'm sorry if other people love it. That's just the way it is, okay? And having the courage to do that, right? To say, I'm sorry, it just isn't my cup of tea. So
right.
And that's okay. Right. There has to be room for different cups of tea. If there isn't, then why are we bothering? So then you end up making this transformation. You have this really horrible crucible thing. I mean, breast cancer is an awful thing for any woman to have to deal with, and I mean, cancer in general, but it, of course, is a problem. But there are particular trials, I think, with breast cancer, aren't there? That I can't speak personally to it, but it seems like there's a kind of a special or a unique experience. Did you find as you were going through that you were trying to be, this is how you're going to feel and you need to feel this way and now this is what you have to deal with? Or were you like, no, I'm not going down that path. I've got my own pathway here and I'm sticking to it. And how did you do that?
I had someone close to me saying, why aren't you scared? Why aren't you depressed? Like, what am I supposed to be?
Oh, I'm
like
sorry.
A damsel in distress for you to save?
Right.
Like, is that what you want me to feel? So I think it's such a weird thing. I'm like, no, I'm actually if I can find my divine alignment and grace in something like this, shouldn't you celebrate that? Shouldn't you be like, wow, she's got it? It's sometimes what I've discovered is that people need you to feel weak so they can feel strong.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I can see.
Right.
Well, they're envious of the fact that you are able to stay strong, right? I mean, that makes them feel weak then that they were not able to do that, or this doesn't make sense. How can you not do that? Everyone does this, right? So
see, but the thing, comparison is the thief of joy. And I believe that I'm not comparing myself to anyone's experience. It's my experience. And for those people who had the privilege to, walk that length of that path with me, and to turn around and say things like, why aren't you like sad? I'm like, I am sad. I'm just handling my sadness in design. I'm designing spaces. I'm redesigning my apartment. Like, that's what gets me. Like, I needed a bone to chew. That was how I expressed that energy. Right.
Sure.
So I to channel my sadness. Like, some people work out. I couldn't work out. Like, I worked out every day and I wasn't allowed to work out for a couple of years there, which was really tough. And back to something that's really important for me to mention, Raul, cancer changes your self-perception. Cancer changes your appearance, right? And if we're living in a society that judges our self-worth based on how we look, right? Mm-hmm. Speaking of Project Runway, I mean, life is a runway, right? Life is a way of like, oh, well, she's looking bad. Well, she's never going to look that good again, right? And what if I can come back stronger and better than even before cancer? What if I look back at pictures? My camera recognizes me as 3 different women. iPhone has like the facial recognition. Mm-hmm. It has me separated from the woman I was before cancer, the woman I was during cancer, and now the woman I am now. Can you believe it? Mm-hmm. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. So that speaks to that level of transformation. And it's really important to recognize, and this is a huge part of what I do. Beauty is healing. And the kind of beauty I'm speaking about is not skin deep. It's not about how we look. It's about how we feel. Okay? It's divine grace. Beauty is our birthright. It is rooted in our divinity. It's rooted in us on a quantum level. Speaking of beauty from a quantum level, that is cellular alignment, cellular harmony, resonance with your truth, with the people that you love in your home. That is the true beauty. And how can I create beauty on a cellular level so that I can heal and come back stronger and look better than before? Sure. Those were the kinds of things that I was channeling.
Well, what's so beautiful about it too is here you are in the midst of a very dark, portion of any person's life, to be fighting a life-threatening disease that, 20, 30 years ago, the prognosis would have been, well, nice knowing you. And to face it with a creative spirit, to face it with, which is usually, I think, the only combat against darkness is light. I mean, you can sit around in darkness and complain about how dark things are, but for goodness sakes, we found a way to make fire. And ever since then, we've found security in light. So find light. And I don't know, as an artist myself, I don't know of a better way to find light than to engage your creative self, because it's always enlightening to do that. So if nothing else, you may not have boom, out in the world, but it is enlightening to us personally to choose to use that tool, that inner light, to change and cast a different light to the world around us, right? Including the people that are saying, why aren't you sad? Well, because I'm choosing a way of life instead of a way of responding, to life. Anyways, that's what you get me thinking about. So I'm sorry. I love
it. I love it. And as you were talking, by the way, again, to bring back science into this, our bodies actually emit light. We just don't have the sensitivity to see it, but we are electromagnetic beings. We have light. We actually produce light. We are light beings. And it's so interesting that, I'm not sugarcoating, my cancer experience. I'm not saying it was all like a walk in the park. And there was a lot of grief attached to it. There was a lot of sadness, and there was a lot of anger and, these less than pretty emotions. I just channeled them. I'm not saying that I didn't have those emotions, and I want to make that distinction, but that I chose to turn my straw into gold. I spun something new out of it that, again, unless we're faced with that thing, I don't know if it's going to be the same for anyone else. Once you're faced with certain challenges, it's really your choice at the end of the day. It's your decision. And that's why I feel like it's so important to talk about and speak to mindset. Once I decided that I wasn't going to allow this to become my whole identity, that this was something I was going to use and research and investigate and figure out, what do I have to learn from this? How can I make this better for me? And I didn't have the answers. I didn't know that all this beauty was on the other side. But I started to listen to my inner GPS, Raul, because I hadn't been before cancer. Before cancer, I was like Kore. Kore is the name of Persephone before she became Persephone. Persephone was only named after she went into her darkness, after she went into her underworld. She was innocent. She was an innocent, uninitiated maiden. And that was her name. Kore was the innocent part of her. And I definitely recognized the part of me that was not initiated, that functioned from an unconscious level. And I'm able to see that. I think it's really important to recognize the parts of us that we didn't, or the things that we didn't realize for ourselves. And suddenly when something clicks and you're like, oh, this was not just me before cancer. This is before me, like me before I woke up, me before I realized, that what I was living in was actually very toxic, me before I realized that I was being manipulated and abused. So it's all of these things. And I think one thing that stops us from actually admitting that to ourselves is our ego. We don't want to feel like we didn't know something. And I think that's crazy, because I'm the first person to admit I don't know about that. The older I get, the more easy it is for me to say, yeah, let me get back to you. I'm not so sure yet. I'm not so sure. Let me figure that out, instead of like feeling like I have to come up with the answers.
Well, then why would you want to do that? I've never quite understood the arrogance that presumes I should know this. It's like, why should you know that? Why would you not instead want to admit that you don't know it and then learn it? I mean, if it interests you, if you would like to know the answer to that, then go learn it. But to expect that, that's what I think in social media I find so amusing, is all these people are becoming experts on things and no one ever challenges to say, excuse me, but this guy really studied it, or this woman actually does it, and that's not true.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, it's very interesting functioning from, I use the word authenticity in my subtitle. Authenticity is being able to admit you don't know. Authenticity is being able to say, yeah, I'm not sure if this is going to work out, but I'm going to do this anyway because it feels right.
Right. Give it a shot. So
Yeah.
what has Edison said, after 10,000 tries with different filaments, and someone asks, well, aren't you kind of ashamed that you have 10,000 things and you haven't been successful? He says, why? Now I know 10,000 things that absolutely won't work. So that makes a lot. That makes sense.
That. Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I've failed so many times. It's failure in a lot of ways has been a very influential teacher. And, those people who don't try at all, it's safe. But as I write in my book, that safety is actually what's killing us. It suffocates you over time when you don't break out.
Right. I actually had a guest just a little while ago talking about how he took his daughter to a butterfly exhibit at a local museum, I think it was, and his daughter was quite young at the time, and noticed that there was this one butterfly in a chrysalis that was breaking out of the chrysalis and was really, of course, struggling. Just, the effort of trying to get out of that chrysalis is so difficult for a butterfly. And his daughter asked him, Daddy, why doesn't someone help that butterfly? And he said very wisely, well, sweetheart, if the butterfly doesn't work, doesn't develop the muscles, doesn't, end up having the substances that need to, be transformed into the wing or transferred into the wings, they won't survive. So it's that struggle that actually gets them to the point where they can fly and be the beautiful butterflies that we all appreciate so much. And I think we so much want to just avoid the struggle. It's just, it's like, now the struggle is icky. I don't want to feel bad. When I hear people say, I don't want to feel bad, I feel like, how shallow are you? I mean, it's just, and then the people that really drive me nuts are the Christians that I've known who have something horrible happen to them. And I get it. A son is killed in a horrible car accident. Awful things, awful things. And they become just so embittered and so nasty and so like, okay, God, put them up. And I was thinking, there is a person that never had to go through any fire. And fire is what turns gold into gold. You have to be, there's sifting and winnowing. I mean, you look any scientific field, you look at historically, there is always a refining process that happens to make something that was originally flawed into a more perfect form. So when we challenge, as you say, embracing that shadow side, right? The shadows are incredibly important for knowing our full dimensionality, right? A thing that is not lit in a way that shows its shadows is not three-dimensional. So I don't know. There's a lot you're getting me thinking about. So I'm sorry, Mawish. This is supposed to be an interview with you, not me spouting off. So, but anyways, I wanted to talk about epigenetics because we mentioned that early on, that you discovered through this process that there are epigenetic effects of design and emotions on health. So how do you balance those sort of scientific insights with the artistic and intuitive aspects of design and creating these kind of healing spaces, if you will?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Let's put it in a very interesting analogy. If epigenetics, if your genes are the home that you have and you walk into that home, now you can turn on the light switch or you don't have to, right? You can decide to paint it as a different color. You can decide to cover it with toxins, but basically we have that agency with our own bodies. If your body is your home, to turn on and off those parts of us that are there. That's like the blueprint, right? That's the basic blueprint, but we have the ability to create healing for ourselves. And this is where the science gets into place in terms of really simple auditing a home. So I have a list where I look at all the things that I looked at, from my kitchen to the pots and the pans that I was eating off of, to the synthetics that, were possibly causing all sorts of problems. And the materials that we use, the things that we inhale, that we are a living ecosystem. We're porous beings. There's a communication happening between us and our environment. And that's what epigenetics is. Most cancers, I would say 75%, are now discovered as a byproduct of your environment and your lifestyle. Okay. That's great news. That's actually great news, because that way we have agency. We have the ability to make those changes. Now, where to start? Right. And that's where I started using my design background. And I said, okay, let me research this. I'm a materials consultant for architectural firms. I look at things. I am constantly looking at different new ways to do things. Why not look at it through the Cancer lens and say, oh, is this good? I just want to make a distinction, Raul. What's touted, what's marketed as good for the environment isn't necessarily good for our health.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, oh, green design. Oh, it's so great. No, it's not. I'm looking at it from, is it good for me? Is it good for you? Not just good for the environment. And speaking of quantum biology, I discovered the fact that now they're linking breast cancer, especially too, because it's a hormonal cancer, to getting the wrong light at the wrong time. Light that is from your TV screen, from your iPad, from your phone, especially after nighttime when the sun sets. Blue light is considered toxic. It's a toxin because our body is a photoreceptor. Our whole entire body is a photoreceptor. We are photosynthesizing beings. And I'm not just talking about what's light's coming in through your eyes. Your skin is a photoreceptor. And that blue light, you might wear glasses to block the blue light, but your skin is still being affected. The body and on your body still internalizing that blue light. So how do I design from that perspective? Oh my God, I can go down a rabbit hole. I have so many great tips for that. So many great tips for that. So that's just one aspect. Even food, the food that we eat is so important. And what most people don't realize, I mean, everyone's talking about losing weight and like looking great. Well, guess what? If you ate the right things, you wouldn't have to try so hard. You would our bodies, the beautiful divine design of our bodies is that we are always seeking to heal ourselves, and we're always seeking homeostasis. And homeostasis is optimal health. So if we can help ourselves maintain that homeostasis, modern life right now is actually pushing us away from homeostasis. And that's what I love doing, is speaking to this.
Yeah, I think honestly, since probably the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, it's been an increasingly forceful push away from homeostasis. The agrarian lifestyle was probably the last, bastion of that sort of thing, and even that's being totally attacked on so many levels. You also have started a whole series of workshops for cancer survivors and administrators, whatnot, that are, from what I can tell, I mean, after talking with you more, I can't see how they couldn't be transformative. And can you give an example of how your design techniques have informed that, and ways that you are sort of able to get people to turn on their light bulb without blue light, of course, but turn on their yellow light bulb and make that work for them?
Sure. So the healing power of beauty, and there's a workshop I've done, and it's been very successful, is looking at your space through your 5 senses, right? So say, for example, you're in your bedroom. What's the first thing you see when you wake up in the morning? Okay. Just simple as that. And what is your lighting like when you go to bed? Is it toxic blue light? Do you have a TV in your bedroom? So that's like from the sense of vision, right? What you see when you wake up and what you see when you go to bed. What do you feel? What are your sheets like? What are you touching? What are you wearing against your skin? Does it feel good? Is it the right material? Is it a synthetic? Is it something that is going to be in tune with your frequency? So there's that. And then, there's scent. What does your bedroom smell like? Do you light a candle? Is it something that, evokes that memory, like I said about my grandmother's garden? I love jasmine. Mm-hmm. Do you smell that scent before you go to sleep? What is your bedtime ritual? Do you have one? Let's create one. What does that look like? Things like that I think are really important. Music, sound. Are you listening to the waterfall or the ocean or the twitter of birds in a forest?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it your favorite music? Like you asked me who my favorite artist is,
Mm-hmm.
right? Am I listening to the soundtrack of A Room with a View? Am I listening to opera at night? Let's set the tone. We're creatures of habit. So I think it's really wonderful to create these rituals that becomes your healing sanctuary. And that also on a biological level sets you for deep rest, right? Are you watching, like I always tell my son, it's really important that you not watch anything violent before you go to sleep. Anything that you watch, you can't remove that. It becomes a part of your subconscious. So be very guarded about what you allow yourself to see. He already does that normally. But if news gets you upset, don't watch CNN before going to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Like things like simple little things like that to start really curating your experiences
Mm-hmm.
at home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the greatest, high-end hotels and spas know this, right? They know this. When you go into a lobby and you smell that candle and it reminds you of the Four Seasons. Oh my God, it always smells so good.
Mm-hmm.
Why not create the Four Seasons in your bedroom?
What? That's crazy talk. So, yeah, boy, it's interesting, all of the stuff you're talking about and the way that, you're lighting up as you talk about it. I suspect it's because it's all so human. It's also humanizing to do that. And yet our whole world these days is so dead set against people attaining that. We poo-poo it. We try to otherize people that adopt that mindset. It's like there's a spiritual war against this mentality, this shaping of reality, and it makes me wonder, what is going to be the light? What's going to be the click? Because I would like to think that virtually everyone can make this, dynamic, this quantum shift. I think we all are gifted with the capability of doing it. I wish there was a way to turn it on for other people, that they would somehow, that you had an on-off switch for others that you could say, okay, because like all the hate and the polarization that's going on right now, I really think we become addicted as a culture to animosity and hatred and, just putting other people down so that we feel better about ourselves. And confirmational bias has become, the next greatest drug. Kind of. So we have to have an antidote for that. And it strikes me that art and beauty and design are that antidote. So how do we inject it? What's the vaccine that would do that?
It's funny. You just reminded me, I have a line, and I wrote a line in my book, is that we vaccinate ourselves against uncertainty. I think the polarization, Raul, comes from trying to vaccinate ourselves against a level of uncertainty. The fact that we're trying to otherize is causing separation. And in order to cause separation, we have to otherize. And I think that level of triangulation that's happening, whether it's political, whether it's societal, on all those levels, I think when I look at it, I'm like, so whoever's doing this is going to benefit from this conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are and what's the benefit for them?
Mm-hmm.
There's always
follow the money.
Follow the money.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. There's always a benefit. There's all this stuff that's happening in front of you. There's an agenda for it. I mean, nothing just happens on its own. It's placed and orchestrated and created. It's designed. It's designed.
Yes. It's bad design, but it's designed. So naughty design. So
stepping back from that, we have the ability. It's number one. It's the reconnection with yourself. If you're disconnected from yourself, then you're going to try to use otherness to create that level of significance. If you're able to feel significant within yourself, that's the stepping stone. And I think self-empowerment, as that might sound, but what I truly mean with that is reconnecting with your shadow, reconnecting with the 6-year-old Raoul and being able to function from there, function from that level of innocence and wonder, right? And open porosity. I think it's so interesting. Like, we are porous, biologically speaking, we're porous beings. And that level of porosity should extend to our hearts too.
And our minds and our spirit and our interactions with people. Boy, porosity is a beautiful thing because water passes through porous materials. And without water, we can live without water for what, 3 days? We live without food for months. It's just how important is water, folks?
Do you know that there's a 4th phase of water?
No.
Did you know that?
I did not.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, the 4th phase of water is liquid crystal, which LCD technology has they figured this out. So they've electrified. We share the same technology as our TVs. So we have this type of structured water within us, which serves as an antenna. And that's why I'm so adamant about Wi-Fi and being able to turn down the electrical charge of things, because our bodies are being robbed of electrons from all our devices. And we have to maintain a certain charge for optimal water porosity to go in and out and for nutrients to go in and out of our cells. Sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole.
No, I keep thinking, when you're talking about that, I keep thinking Tesla. I suspect that has something to do with what Tesla saw in his, idiocy of geniusness, right? He just, what a wonderful, illuminated, I think he actually makes Einstein look kind of dumb. Which is saying something, right? But there is Tesla was onto that same sort of thing of there being energy everywhere, and just learning how to see that energy is the next big part of the journey, that we can't even define it because it's so different from the way that we're thinking, and we've been conditioned to think. It takes a whole new sensibility. And sort of the things we're talking about, there requires a sensibility as well towards, I can choose a way of death and darkness, or I can choose a way of light and health and design. That's an important lesson for anyone, right? So,
yes, beauty from a quantum level, again, is really about living in balance with your darkness, living in balance with the fact that we all will die, and to live our life. And I think for me, it informs me in such a way where I make my decisions from a place of what have I got to lose? I tell my son, go and ask whatever you need to ask that question. He's like, I don't want to sound stupid. I'm like, no, but if you don't ask, then at least 50% of the answer might be yes. You might be able to get it. You might be able to try. Why not give yourself that chance? Give yourself the permission to just try something. It's better to try than to not even and never know that you could have succeeded. What's the point after all?
Right. Stupid is not knowing the answer. Stupid is not wanting to know the answer. So, and that's something I've tried to teach my kids. I've tried to teach other people. It's just you're not stupid because you don't know the answer, but you will be stupid if you don't want to know the answer. So just, just get that through our heads, please. Mawish, there's so much more to talk about. Mawish, I'm so sorry that we only have, we're already at an hour here, and I make my promise to my guests I won't take more than an hour because it's not fair. But I hope we can please find another time to talk again. I would love to continue the conversation because there is so much more just in your talking points that I never even got to. You have 11 questions. I think I got 1.5 answered. So, but.
Oh, that's a good thing. That's a good thing because that's a sign that, you liked and were inspired to share, your perspective. And I value that very much.
Well, thank you very much. Folks, my guest today has been Mahwish Syed. Mawish is an authoress. She is a inspirer, a designer. She has written a book, right? Purgatory to Paradise is a book. Is that available on Amazon? Is that something that people...
Yeah, it's on Kindle, Amazon, and on Audible. If you like to listen and play it in your car or while you're cooking, you can do that too.
Excellent. And if people want to find out more, you have a website, right? www.claimyourparadise.com?
Yes.
And what sorts of things do people find if they go there?
Oh my gosh, I have courses, I have audit lists for your home, I have design masterclasses, like my top 3 lessons to transform your space right here, right now. Your paradise is all about your now.
Okay. And
beauty.
They can get in contact with you. I'm assuming that would be a possibility through there too? Okay. Well, No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, Instagram is Mahwish_Syed_designs.
Okay. And Mahwish Syed Designs on Facebook, right?
Yes.
Okay. LinkedIn. I mean, you're on all of it. I don't see TikTok anywhere.
Everywhere.
Where's TikTok? So.
Yeah, I'm on TikTok too. Just, very small.
I'm not on TikTok. I can't even get Instagram working. I'm like, I don't know. I guess I'm getting too old for some of this stuff. Maybe I'll hire some young assistant that can just go do that for me. So that would be good. Yeah. So anyways, well, thank you so much, Mawish. I really appreciate your time. It's so wonderful getting to meet you. And folks, I hope you've enjoyed my conversation with Mawish as much as I've enjoyed it, although you'd be hard-pressed to do that. So, and I thank everyone for tuning in here on Frame of Reference, Profiles in Leadership, and I hope we've given you another wonderful profile to think about, consider, and maybe just try this way of thinking. Okay, take care. See you next week.